So let's talk about CSS selectors and specificity. Yeah, many developers struggle to provide a convincing answer in a job interview, even some senior developers, about what the hell specificity means, which is surprising because the idea is quite simple. So let's present the problem. I got a simple application. There is nothing particularly relevant on it. So, hello up. So let me create a box. So div class name box, and then we are going to display a message, hello box 1. So imagine that I want to change the styles of the box. So I can do dot box, and then I can simply do, background color yellow. Okay? I'm just doing a smoke test. You know what smoke test is? When you get your driving license and you manage to drive by the first time in your life, probably you won't get access to a brand new car. You inherit a car from your uncle, from your dad, whoever. It's a very old car. Sometimes it doesn't work well. So the smoke test means if the car doesn't work, you try to switch on the engine, and then you check, you move out of the car, you check from the back of the car, and if there is a smoke at the back of the car, that means at least the engine is working. That's a smoke test. Because if there is no smoke at the rear of the car, that means that you are essentially you're fucked. Yeah? The car is going to work. That's a smoke test. Yeah? Obviously, with the new electric vehicles, this joke will stop making sense for the millennials. But historically speaking, that's what we call a smoke test. So I did a smoke test, just changing something silly, just to make sure that my app reacts to my efforts. Yeah? Fantastic. So let me present the problem. I'm going to create a p tag. You know, p is what? What p stands for? A paragraph. Correct. So now I'm going to change the style of one paragraph, like background color green, yeah, for instance. So yeah, I got the green background color. I can add some extra properties like padding, 30 pixels. Even if you want, font size, 30 pixels, color white. We did a bit of CSS yesterday, yeah? So yeah, fantastic. My box is there. But now, I would like to create another CSS selector to refer to the class name. How do I refer to the class name, guys? Dot what? Correct. Box and background color blue. So now the immediate question is, I hope you see there is a conflict when talking about the background color, because two CSS selectors are trying to take the control on the background color. Which one wins? What will be the eventual background color? The blue or the green? Why blue?
With the costume, you're specifying that you're calling
Okay, so then let me simplify the problem.
What is name is more specific than p tag.
I love that. And what if I got, first of all, ignore the class for now. Let me go one step back. What if I got two p tags? Is that legal, first of all? Can I have two selectors with the same matching element? Yeah? So what will be the background color now? Green or blue?
Blue.
Which one?
Blue.
Why blue?
Because it goes from top to bottom.
That's correct, isn't it? Yeah, that's correct. It's blue because it's the last one. Yeah? So what if I then change the order? What's the background color now? Green. Yeah? So the last one wins, sometimes. In this particular case, the last one wins. Why? Because both selectors are equally specific. P tag. So let's leave this second p tag and let's add a box. And now background color red. So what's the color now? Red. But why? Is it because it's at the end? All right, so first of all, I think we all agree it should be red, yeah? Fantastic. But now the question is, what if I move the box selector to the top of my CSS style sheet? Still red? Does anybody disagree on that? Anybody thinking it will be green? Hopefully nobody thinks it's green, but blue at least? No? You're right, guys. Still red, even though it is declared on top, in reality, it wins, the class selector wins because it's more specific. That's what the specificity is about. But technically speaking, how does the browser determine which one wins? Is there any way to analyze that problem from an algorithmic point of view? Yes. When talking about the specificity, we can say that the specificity is just a number. That's the most beautiful description of specificity. Specificity is a number. Each selector has a number. So whoever has the highest number wins that battle. So what's the number associated to a tag selector?
1.
Wrong. Actually, right. Sorry, what did I say wrong? Sorry, I was thinking something. Ignore me, Daniel. Let me put it on top. You're right. Tag selectors, P, div, label, H1, H2, they got number 1. If, imagine that we got only these 2, we don't have the class yet, the last one wins because even though they got the same number, then the way to resolve the problem is by checking the last. But when talking about classes, sorry, I don't know where I click. Yeah, when talking about classes, what's the specificity associated to a class?
2.
Wrong. It's not 2. Three, wrong. Wrong. 10, that's correct. So a class selector is 10 times more specific than a P or a tag selector.
So these are like official CSS
Yes.
numbers.
Yes, these are official CSS numbers. I didn't make that numbers up. Yeah, this is proper official way of calculating the specificity. Tag selectors, number 1. Class selectors, number 10.
Do we need to know this, like the numbers you think? Or?
It depends how much money you want to make in life. Yeah. So if you apply to a junior position, I would be happy if you tell me that specificity is a number, and for instance, a class is more specific than a tag. But if on top of that you say a class has number 10 and a tag has number 1, ooh, because the employer may not even know these numbers. Yeah? So when you tell the employer something that they don't even know, you know, big balls. Yeah. Cool. Does that mean that a class selector is always going to win the battle against a class selector? Not really. Not really. Why? Let me present you an example. Well, at least the theory. Can I have a paragraph inside of another paragraph? Second?
Inside of another paragraph, of course.
Yeah. We may discuss if from a UX point of view that makes sense or not. But technically speaking, from an HTML point of view, of course we can, yeah? Imagine we got that. Yeah. Let me remove the last p tag for simplicity reasons. Imagine we got that, yeah? One paragraph and another paragraph inside of it. To access the inner paragraph, in CSS you can do that. Yeah? That means find a p tag. Where is the first p tag? Here. And then find another p tag inside of the first one. There you go. Yeah? That means these styles will only apply here. So can you tell me what's the specificity associated to this selector?
Two.
Correct. 1 plus 1, 2. So I hope you get the point, right? Eventually, can we have 10 nested p tags. Technically speaking, yes. So technically speaking, we could do that, right? And now the specificity of this selector will be obviously free. That's not enough to defeat the class selector because it's 10 versus free. But I hope you get the point that technically speaking, it's not impossible to defeat a class selector.
Is that why it's 10 and not 2?
Say again?
Is that why?
Correct. That's why it's 10 to have some sort of gap. Yeah? If you eventually do something like that, eventually, the tag selector will win that battle. Obviously, it goes without saying, why the hell you are doing that? Yeah? But technically speaking, it's important to know that it's possible. Yeah? It's possible. However, let's keep the example as much simple and natural as possible. Yeah? So, hello CSS. So now the specificity went back to 1. So, do you know that in HTML, because you are working with React, we briefly talked about that yesterday, you can set up attributes. An attribute is just something you declare on the HTML. So I can do, for instance, hello equals Codiri. You see? That's a custom attribute I'm adding on the HTML. So now my point is, do you know how to access this element via the attribute key and value? Say it again?
P.hello?
No, that's not correct. If I want to access the tag via the attribute, the syntax is square bracket, that's CSS, hello equals Coding. That's an attribute selector. Background color blue. So what's the background color? Who wins this battle now? If you don't know, let's think about numbers. What's the specificity associated to an attribute selector? Is it more specific than class? Less specific? Equally specific? Less. All right. So what do you mean less? What's the number? Prima? Second? 5, for instance? 9? I mean, if Ebrima is right, let's assume Ebrima is right. He's creating the standards of CSS, so he decided that the specificity of the attribute selector is 9. What will be, in this particular case, the eventual background color? Correct. It should be red, because the more specific selector will be the class name. Is that true? No. That means the attribute selector wins because it's blue. But then what's the number? Is it 20? If it will be 20, it will imply that moving the selector on top, what should be the background color? Should be blue. If it's 20. If it's about 10, if it's more than 10, it should be 20. But pay attention to the screen, guys. It's 10. In other words, correct, it's also 10. Attribute and class selectors have the same specificity power. Can I do that, guys? What's the specificity associated to this selector? That's correct. We got 1 plus 10. That's why now the background color is blue. If we remove the p tag, the specificity is 10. So there is a draw for the victory. So the last one wins. Yeah. So bear in mind that you can obviously combine multiple selectors and they will affect the eventual result. Yeah? So it's very important to be able to predict which class name will win this battle. So is there anything more specific than the class name or the attribute selector? The ID, that's correct, guys. So you can create IDs. IDs were very important back in time in the 90s and early in the century. Yeah? Today, it feels very weird to work with IDs because an ID is something that is supposed to be unique. That's why it has an ID. However, with modern coding libraries and frameworks like React, they go against the basic principle of having something unique. They work on the other way around. React is not about having something unique. It's about reusing. Yeah? So it feels very weird to use IDs these days. However, hey, they're still there, so you can use them. So I can create an ID called Daniel. So how do I refer to the Daniel ID? Hashtag, correct. Has Daniel. So now, background color pink. Who wins this time? Pink. Oh, you cannot see that, right? Pink wins. Oh, you cannot even see anything. But trust me, it's there.
Yeah.
You can see. It's there. Yeah. Let me put purple if you want. Definitely, the ID wins. And what if so what was the specificity associated to the ID? 100, that's correct, Daniel. Yeah. 100. Yeah. Is it impossible to defeat the ID? What happens if I concatenate 800 P selectors? Eventually, I can defeat the the ID. But if you are in a job interview and you see someone doing that and laughing, leave that company very quickly, yeah, because you may be in danger. Yep. So the ID wins because it has a higher number. It's 100. It's obviously hard to defeat. So essentially, it doesn't matter where you define the ID. You put it on top, that's fine, yeah. Still 100. Still 100. Still wins. Is there anything more specific than the ID? I love that. Inline styles. In HTML, you can do something extremely controversial, but it's still valid, called style. And when you do styles, you can do something like that. Yellow. Be careful, because if you do that in HTML, it will work. But if you do that in a React application, React will complain. I told you yesterday that this looks like HTML, but there are some subtle differences. Class name was the most obvious example. But now when talking about the style, that's not the way you can define style. So to create styles, as the error says, expects a mapping. A mapping means an object. So you need to essentially do something like that. An object with key value pairs. Yeah, this is the way React works. So when you do that, then inline styling wins. So what's the specificity number associated to inline styling?
1,000.
Correct? Yeah. 1K.
If we multiply by 10.
Yeah, no, actually, I like it. You see, he didn't really know, but just applying basic logic rules, he found out the solution. So I like that way of thinking. Yeah. It's 1K. Yeah. And now, classic job interview question. What do you think about inline styling? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Why? Never use it? But you never use it because you didn't know you could do that, or because you never really like it?
Because it can cause conflicts with other developers if they're trying to style stuff and they don't see that there's an inline style. If they're trying to apply changes in the CSS file, nothing's working.
Yep, I like that. It's all about separation of concerns. Why we got something called CSS? To style things. If we use our HTML to style things, we're mixing things. We're creating what we call spaghetti code. You know spaghetti code? You know spaghetti? This is a spaghetti code. This line is important. On the left-hand side, we create the structure, the skeleton of your app. On the right-hand side, you style beautifully the app. Yeah? Don't mix things. Don't mix things. Yeah? So yeah, you're right. You're right. So obviously, creating inline styles difficults everything, because if someone wants to change the CSS, probably they cannot, because someone creates inline style with very high specificity. Also from a reusability point of view. Yeah. If I create a style called .box, I can reuse it many times. But if I inline style something here, it's much harder to reuse, because this style only apply on that particular element. Yeah? There are lots of discussions. Some people defend inline styling, but that's highly controversial. Yeah? So the majority of the community is against that pattern. So applying to a junior position, you know, that's all you need to know. However, one day you apply to a senior position. So then my next question will be, is there any scenario where using inline styles could be considered a good pattern? Can you think about any good usage for inline styles? Probably not, right? So let me give you 2 reasons why sometimes you use inline styles. Again, this is one of the things that companies are not expecting you to say. Yeah. So I'm just trying to show you, you know, ways to impress the employer. So reason number 1 is you use inline styles when you need to be able to decide your CSS in real time, depending on, for instance, users' behavior. Let me present you a problem. You know, in Codery, when you hover some buttons, you see, you get the tooltip. How do I calculate the position of the tooltip? It's not that simple. Yeah? Probably that's not the best example I can think about, but it may work. The position of the tooltip may depend on the position of my cursor, which is dynamic. Have you seen these tooltips that when you move your cursor, it follows you? Yeah? So we need to dynamically calculate the position, margin, stuff like that, based on users' interaction. So when you do that, when you depend on JavaScript, because JavaScript can give you the position of the mouse on the screen, you need to do some JavaScript styling. Yeah? You know, on Amazon, when you find a product you like, you hover the picture and then it gets zoomed in, and when you hover, the zoom follows you. This sort of CSS is dynamic. Yeah? So you need JavaScript for that. It's something a bit exotic, but sometimes you need that. Reason number 2 is performance. It's been analyzed, it's been stated that inline styling is slightly more performant than CSS. Yeah? So 99.99999% of the websites don't care about that, because the difference is very subtle. But if you're a company like Amazon or Facebook, yeah, saving 0.01% of your computing time may save you millions of dollars a year. Yeah? So these companies, they often do inline styling. Yeah? Yeah. But be careful, be careful, be careful. There is a misunderstanding here. If you check Amazon on websites like these ones, you may find inline styling. But does it mean that developers write styling like that here? If they are so stupid to do that? Of course not. Of course not. What they do is they write the styles in the classic way, on the right-hand side, and they have a process called optimization. Whenever they want to release a new version of their apps to the cloud, you'll see that on test number 17. There is a process of optimizing your resources for the web. So at the time they want to optimize the resources, they run some mechanism, they run some processes to transform external style into inline style. In other words, in this particular problem, so they will get no inline style. Which is the winning style with the winning background color, guys? Which one? Say it again.
The ID.
The idea, correct. So purple. Yeah, purple will be the winning color. So these companies run a process where they figure out the winning color or winning padding or winning font size, whatever. They find out the computed properties, to be more precise, and then that process will automatically modify the snippets to apply them. Yeah? Because once again, it's just very subtle, but it's a bit more fun. Yeah? Anyway, you don't care about these things, but it's good to know that, technically speaking, that's potentially a reason to use inline styles.
What's the specificity value of internal CSS?
Of internal CSS, that's a really good question. Internal CSS attack tags. I think we saw an example yesterday when talking about p tags. Yeah. So the browser somewhere is doing that. So what's the specificity associated to the selector? It's one. Because the browser declares their styles on top of everything else. As soon as you declare another selector with the same specificity value, you will win that battle, as we saw yesterday. Okay? So we got the tag selector, the class selector, the attribute selector, the ID selector, the inline selector. Is the inline selector the most specific one? Is there anything about it? Have you ever been in a position where you tried to change a style and it didn't work, and you tried to change the color and it didn't work? No. Ian got it. In CSS, there is a highly controversial property called important. What that means? That means the P selector, the background color associated to the P selector, it doesn't have a specificity 1. So what does anybody know the specificity associated to the important suffix?
10,000.
That's correct. Unsurprisingly, it's 10K.
Why the exclamation mark?
It's just a convention in CSS. Okay? It's a special way of winning the battle easily. Can we win the battle by writing 10,000 p tags? I'm not going to do that, obviously, but okay, could we do that? If you got 10,000 nested p tags, you have bigger problems in life. Yeah? But yes, technically speaking, we can. However, I mean, the thing is, if you use the exclamation mark important suffix, you are likely to win the battle. But back to my previous question about the inline styling. What do you think about this technique? Good, bad, and why? Why bad?
The same reason I mentioned before, because your other developers may not know it's there and it may cause some problems.
Yep, correct. This is a snowball problem. You're making the problem worse. Yeah? Imagine that we are all working in this project. And I built the first line, I built that P without important. Yeah? I built that. After that, Menji said, no, I don't like green. Now the background color of our app will be blue. And then afterwards, Ebrima said, no, I don't like blue. I like red. And then Daniel said, no, that's bullshit. I like purple. Yeah? And then Adam said, no, I like yellow. So we're changing our styles. And then 2 weeks later, I've been on holidays. I come back to the project. When I left the project, the background color was green. But suddenly now, it's not green anymore, it's yellow. Like, what the hell? And I start checking the changes, I can see that you all changed the background color. Like, what the hell are these guys doing? No. I don't care what you've done. I'm going to ignore you. Background color is green. And the day after, Minji comes back to the project and then says, oh, I left the background color in red. What the hell is going on? Blue, purple, yellow? No. Green? No. You see the problem, yeah? And no, everyone, no, yeah? So eventually, we'll end up on, this is game over, essentially, yeah? Because we are all trying to take control on the situation, yeah? There is a very easy, to me, the easiest way to evaluate the quality of a project from a CSS point of view is, you know what? Searching /important. How many times the guys are using the important suffix? The more they use it, the worse. Because that means they were unable to solve the problems in a friendly way. They were unable to orchestrate, yeah, the specificity of their platform. That's a classic problem. Many teams struggle in the long term to satisfy the specificity values according to their needs. Yeah? So it's not surprising. I'm not going to tell you, hey, if you see /important, that means that you shouldn't work in that company. That's not true. Sometimes, you know, it's real life. Yeah. You know, when you watch YouTube workshops, many projects, they work like a chart, everything is perfect, but that's not real life. In real life, there is a very fun joke about how to evaluate the quality of the software. And that the metric is what the facts per minute. Have you heard that?
What per minute?
What the facts per minute. So, what the fact per minute. Let me show you a picture. Even the best projects you can ever work at, I don't care if it's Google, Facebook, whatever, they do what the fuck, like what the fuck they did that, yeah? The important thing is how many times you said what the fuck per day. Yeah? So when talking about you know, specificity, sometimes you need to do that. But it's important to know that it goes without saying you have to do your best to avoid a situation where you need to use /important. Yeah? However, once again, back to my question, is there any scenario where you could be proud is probably the best word, but you could actually defend in a job interview, yes, I had to use important? Yes, let me give you one example, a real example, where I have to use /important. Back to the tooltip problem. Yeah, that's a tooltip. So I didn't build that tooltip by myself. I integrated an external plugin to display tooltips using React. Yeah? You'll work with plugins and extensions hopefully next month. Yeah? So the problem was, when I downloaded the plugin, by default, the color of the tooltip was orange. Obviously, orange doesn't play well with Codery's color scheme. So the first thing I did is I went to my CSS, and then I realized that the tooltip had a class name called tooltip, and you know, I changed the color to my corporate color at Codery, which is cerulean. And then back to the web browser, didn't work. Tooltip was still orange. So I tried to increase the specificity. I tried to be polite. So I realized that inside the tooltip there was another selector called, I don't know, so at the moment, the specificity is what? 10. Yeah? But now I realize there was something else, tooltip content. So what's the specificity of my selector now? 20, correct. Not 29, 20. Yeah? Didn't work. There was something else finally, a span or a label or a paragraph, 30. Still didn't work. 20, correct, sorry, you're right. It's 21. 20 plus 20 plus 1. Yeah? So essentially, I try to be polite, I try to be elegant, try to win that battle in a polite way, in a very British way. Yeah? However, didn't matter what I did, I'd lose the battle. Yeah, my selector was always less specific. The thing is, that was an external plugin. So maybe the guy did something like that. Maybe he wrote some inline styles. Yeah? Why? I don't know, but maybe he did that. I don't have control on that piece of software. That's a black box. That's a piece of code I downloaded from the internet. Eventually, because I was unable to deal with that battle, I said, hey, listen, you know what? It was the only option. If you don't have the control on the code, you cannot refactor it to play with the specificity. This is a black box. Yeah? So this is a scenario where, you know, you may accept using /important, but it goes without saying that the less you use it, the better. Any questions? No?
Good.
That's pretty much it. Let me show you a final joke. So, have you watched The Shining movie? The Shining, I'm sure you've watched it. The Shining,
Oh yeah.
Shining from Jack Nicholson. Yeah? Classic movie, horror movie. It was a horror movie, yeah, in the 80s. I remember when I was a kid, they played the movie at night, and my parents didn't allow me to watch it because it was a scary movie. Yeah? The other day, I was watching TV, Spanish TV after lunch, and they were playing it at 3 p.m. Yeah? Because according to today's standards, this is just a joke, yeah, from a scary point of view. So anyway, there is a joke about that movie and a specificity. Specificity. I mean, you haven't watched the movie, the joke doesn't make much sense, yeah? But if you got the opportunity to watch the movie, then so someone tried to explain how specificity works. So what the movie is about based on specificity, how dangerous each character is. Actually, let me tell you something. I forgot something. Before going that deep. So we've been talking about specificity values starting from 1. Yeah? 1 was the weakest one. The tag selector was 1, then 10, then 100, then 1000, then 10,000. However, is there anything less powerful than a tag selector? Is there any selector with specificity 0?
HTML or body tag.
No, that's wrong, because HTML and body, they got specificity 1. It's a tag selector. HTML is a tag.
Roots.
Say it again?
Roots tag.
Roots tag? What is that?
I think similar to HTML.
No, it's just a tag. Eh? If I type something, that's a tag. There is, however, a weird selector called the universal one. Yeah, that's a bit exotic, but you can do that in CSS. That means every single element in your web application will apply these styles. That's a bit weird, because to me, that selector breaks the entire cascading principle about CSS. If I want any background color to be red, what I will do is I will declare that on my HTML. I will do that, so every element inside of it will inherit the color. So applying some CSS rules to every single element feels a bit weird, but anyway, that's possible. Yeah, it's possible. So the specificity of the universal selector is 0. Yeah, something a bit weird, but it exists. So back to the Shining example. Actually, the website, I didn't know, is csssspecificity.com. Yeah, fantastic. I love that. So, how dangerous or how likely to be killed by that character you are, something like that. Yeah. So, universal selector. You see the kid, you know, it's not dangerous. And look, here you see the star. It's telling you the number. So this is 1. That will be 10. That will be 100, I believe. Yeah. The tag selector, div, What happened when, oh, I don't understand what happened when I hover. Anyway, the tag selector 1 has specificity 1. Yeah? If you got 2 tag selectors, it's 1 plus 1, 2. Yeah? If you, well, if you got 9 tag selectors, your specificity will be 9. Then, of course, class selector, specificity 10. Yeah? You know, I mean, there are many examples here. You also got the attribute selector. You can combine tag selector, class selector, attribute. So there are obviously multiple combinations, yeah? But referring to the ones we've talked about, you get, so for instance, you see, that's the ID, yeah? Specificity 100. What else? You see 2 IDs and tag, yeah? Specificity is 201. Makes sense, right? 100 plus 100 plus 1, 201. Look, things start getting serious. Even if you haven't watched the movie, I'm sure that scene is familiar, yeah, with the siblings. When you got the inline selector, specificity is 1000. Yeah? And obviously, as you can imagine, the famous scene of Jack Nicholson breaking the door, yeah? One of the most iconic scenes of Hollywood / important, specificity 1, actually 10,000. Yeah, that's the most specific one. Yeah. It's a good joke. Feel free to use that. I mean, I would love someone bringing me that example in a job interview, yeah? Because that proves that you got programming culture. If you come across that example, it's because you had to Google a specificity. You had to research a bit. Yeah? Cool. Anything else? No? Thank you very much.